Hello and welcome to the weekly market metrics. We are in week 46 of the year, just 6 weeks left in 2025. And I'm already preparing for 2025's grand finale. That is, I have just started cleaning my room, organizing my files, deleting all junk emails, basically doing all the things I had promised myself that I'd do back in January. Anyway, let me get back to business, and it's time for our weekly dose of market metrics. My expectations from 2 weeks ago finally played out this week, even though they didn't happen last week when I actually wanted them to. Now I'm stuck in the classic trader's dilemma. Should I expect or should I not? At this point, even my timing has trust issues. In other news this week, Warren Buffett officially retired, marking an end of an era in investing. I wanted to plug one of my previous episodes here, but I'll leave that for another day. Otherwise, it was all hunky-dory with the markets this week, though there was a bit of an indecision thanks to the Bihar election results on Friday. I assumed it would be a total non-event, but turns out I was completely wrong. Anyways, let's get started with the charts and indexes. As always, Nifty first. Talking about the weekly time frame, Nifty held the 25,300 low from last week, and this week it made a higher low at 25,450. For the week, Nifty rallied 418 points, that's about 1.64%, and closed at 25,910. It did run into some resistance near 26,000 zone and saw a bit of selling, but Friday's close was still pretty strong. Key resistances remain at 26,000 and 26,100, with support sitting at 25,300. As discussed last week, we finally got that weekly close above the previous week's high near 25,800, so the bias shifts to positive for now. Let's see how the index behaves in the coming sessions. On the daily chart, Nifty posted 5 straight green candles this week based on the previous day's close. Tuesday and Thursday were particularly volatile, and on Thursday, Nifty hit a resistance at 26,000 and then dropped almost 1% from the day's highs going into Friday. But on Friday at 3 p.m., we saw a strong recovery with the index gaining almost 0.5% from 3 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. Resistance levels remain the same as the weekly 26,000 and 26,100. Support is at 25,450 and 25,000. On the daily chart, Nifty needs to close about 26,000 before it can attempt any further move up. Moving to the 1 hour time frame, Nifty traded below the 50 EMA until the last hour on Tuesday. After that, it spent the rest of the week holding above the 50 EMA. Friday's gap down opening gave a small shock to the longs, and price hovered around the 50 EMA through the session, but it never closed below it. The final hour's candle completely changed the tone and set things up for what looks like an exciting week ahead with an upward bias. The 1 hour bias is now positive, and hopefully the price continues to push higher. Talking about the overnight versus intraday action in Nifty this week, intraday movement clearly dominated, with Nifty gaining 1.19% intraday versus just 0.4% overnight. Nifty opened with positive gaps in the first 4 sessions, but Friday's negative opening almost wiped out the cumulative positive gaps of the week. Looking at 2025 year-to-date, Nifty has gained roughly 9.1% from overnight moves, while only 1.71% from intraday moves. Let's move to Bank Nifty now. On a weekly time frame, after going nowhere for the last 3 weeks, Bank Nifty finally broke out and made a new all-time high at 58,616 this week, before closing just 100 points lower at 58,518. The index gained 641 points or 1.11%, marking the highest weekly close ever for Bank Nifty. Support and resistance zones remain unchanged from last week, support at 57,600 and resistance at 58,600 near the all-time high. Above that, the index is in a blue sky territory with no historical resistance. The weekly outlook remains bullish, with the index hovering near its all-time high. Looking at Bank Nifty on a daily time frame, it posted 5 straight green candles just like Nifty. Key levels remain the same as weekly chart, resistance near 58,600 and support near 57,600 and 57,400 zone, and then at 57,000. Bank Nifty made a new all-time high on Thursday but faced some selling in the last hour. Friday opened with a gap down, but the recovery in the final 30 minutes was sharp and convincing. Looking at Bank Nifty on a 1 hour chart, it hovered around the 50 EMA until the first half of Tuesday, and after that it held above 50 EMA for the rest of the week, very similar to Nifty. Overall, Bank Nifty continues to look strong across multiple time frames, and being near its all-time high only adds to the momentum. Moving on to Midcap Nifty on a weekly time frame, Midcap Nifty made a new all-time high this week. Just like Bank Nifty, the index gained 419 points or 3.11% to close at 13,865. As mentioned in the last week's market metrics video, it closed above 13,620 level and is now back in a blue sky territory with no resistances overhead. Support remains at 13,550 and 13,250. The weekly outlook is bullish as the index is at all-time high. On the daily charts, Midcap Nifty formed 4 green candles this week based on the previous day's close, with just 1 red candle on Thursday. Support lies near the gap area at 13,750 and 13,700, followed by 13,600 and 13,350. There's no resistance on the chart since the index is sitting at an all-time high. Moving to SENSEX on a weekly time frame, after 2 back-to-back red weekly candles, the index bounced this week, gaining 13,047 points or about 1.62% to close at 84,563. This marks the highest weekly close since September 2024. Resistance sits at 85,300 and then near 86,000 all-time high zone. Support is near this week's low at 83,200. The weekly outlook is bullish as the Sensex has posted its highest weekly close in almost 14 months. On a daily time frame, the story is similar to Nifty and Bank Nifty. Sensex had 5 straight green candles this week. Resistance is at 85,300 and support is at 83,150. The upper wick seen over the last 3 sessions need to be taken out with a strong closing for any meaningful up move towards the all-time high. The bias remains bullish for now. Moving to the rate of change this week, in the second week of November, it's greenery all across the board, with Midcap Nifty leading the pack at 3.11% for the week, followed by Nifty at 1.64% and Sensex at 1.62%, and Bank Nifty is at 1.11%. On a year-to-date basis, Bank Nifty continues to be the strongest performer with 15% gains, followed by Nifty at 9.6% and Sensex at 8.2%. Talking about the directional bias, last week Nifty and Sensex had a negative short-term bias, but this week all 4 indices show positive short-term and medium-term bias. What does that mean? It simply indicates that the momentum has shifted in favor of the bulls and the market is aligned for a continuation on the upside unless key support levels are broken. Looking at the top performing sectors this week, Pharma up 2.94% and Auto up 1.72% continue to stay in the top 5 just like last week, with Nifty IT taking the top spot this time at 3.37% gains for the week. The other 2 new entrants in the top 5 are Infra and Service sector, gaining 2.4% and 1.54% respectively. Now, will the next up move be led by the Nifty IT sector? Let's wait and watch. Now, talking about the range, straddle prices and expiries this week, Nifty's 5-day average range is still around 200 points, which is similar to the past 2 weeks and also matches the 10-day average range. This week, the highest daily range for Nifty came on Tuesday with 267 points, unlike the previous 2 weeks where Fridays had the largest range. It wasn't just Nifty. In fact, Bank Nifty, Midcap Nifty and Sensex also recorded their highest daily ranges on Tuesday. Even though Friday was volatile because of Bihar election results, Tuesday still remained the highest range day across all 4 indices. The Nifty 2DT straddle premium is at 204, up from last week's 175. So there's a slight uptick in Nifty volatility compared to last week's, but it's still in line with the average daily range of the past 5 to 10 days, which sits at around 200 points. Talking about the Nifty expiry this week's Nifty expiry was one of the toughest as the index dropped 190 points in the first hour and then rallied 266 points from the lows all the way to close. All of this happened with the straddle premium sitting at around 115 at 9:16 am. Hopefully option buyers or long gamma players managed to capture some of that move, but for option sellers it was an extremely difficult day. Then came the Sensex expiry on Thursday, which made the Nifty expiry look quite easy. The index was extremely jumpy, creating a massive 666-point range with an opening straddle premium of just about 325. The post 2 p.m. down move was brutal for short wall sellers as many OTM puts shot from 5 rupees to 50 rupees in no time. Two tough expiries back to back. Hopefully next week is a little quieter. Talking about India VIX this week, it finally cooled down 5%, closing at 11.93. VIX is hovering around the same range for the past few weeks, makes me want to think if this is the new volatility zone. But as you already know, I am pretty bad with predictions. So let's wait and watch where India VIX heads next. Moving to commodities this week. After a steady week across the commodity space, gold posted a weekly gain of 2.69%, continuing its strong momentum with solid returns across all time frames and up 27% over 6 months, 54% year to date. Despite this strength, it still sits around 4.82% below its all-time high. Silver outperformed all major metals this week with a 6.69% gain, extending its impressive medium-term uptrend. It's up 58% in 6 months and nearly 70% year to date. It remains at about 5.94% off its all-time high, but continues to be a top performer among the precious metals. Copper was relatively quiet, gaining 0.86% for the week. Its broader trend remains healthy with 10% 3-month and 12% 6-month gains. It's currently at around 5.65% off its all-time high. Crude oil stayed weak, slipping around 0.34% for the week and remaining in a broader downtrend. Natural gas bounced this week with 3.51% gain, continuing its momentum from the past month where it's up about 8.89%. Overall, precious metals continue to lead, base metals remain steady, crude oil stays weak, and natural gas shows early signs of a potential turnaround. In summary, it was a strong and green week across the market. Nifty held above last week's low, formed a higher low at 25,450 and closed at 25,910. Flipping the weekly bias back to positive, it faces resistance at 26,000, 26,100, those levels. Bank Nifty and Midcap Nifty both hit new all-time highs with both posting its highest weekly close ever. SENSEX also turned positive, logging in the best weekly close in over a year. Across time frames, daily, weekly and hourly, all four indices now in a positive short-term and medium-term structure. Sectors were led by IT, Pharma, Auto, Infra and Services, while volatility remained low despite the extreme tricky expiries. India VIX cooled off to 11.9 and in commodities, gold, silver stayed strong while natural gas continued its bounce. Overall, a healthy, bullish week with momentum building across the board. Now moving to what to expect next week. Looking ahead to the next week, we have a full 5-day trading stretch with no major events lined up, which means price action will likely be driven purely by market sentiment and technical levels. The big question is, will Nifty and Sensex finally touch their all-time highs? I'm generally a glass half full kind of a person, so I'd say the setup looks promising, the structure is strong, momentum is healthy, the breadth is improving, but as always, the market will do what it wants to do. Let's see how it plays out. So that's pretty much for this week, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Until then, stay curious, stay steady, and have a great weekend. See you soon.